they're allowed under the words of money bail is if you can pay, you can go home. Well, the low income people don't have the money, um, and but they have jobs, they have families, and so the person says, "My God, I'll say that I did it when in fact they didn't, so they can go home." Sure.
Okay.
What do you want? Yeah.
So the Staten Island News Organization is here today with Professor Peter Edelman. Professor Edelman is currently the Carmack Waterhouse Professor of Law and Public Policy at Georgetown University Law Center, where he teaches constitutional law and poverty law and is faculty director of the Georgetown Center on Poverty and Inequality at Georgetown University Law. He has written extensively on the topics of poverty and inequality in America, including the books So Rich, So Poor, Why It's So Hard to End Poverty in America, and Not a Crime to Be Poor, The Criminalization of Poverty in America. He has served in all branches of government, including as a legislative assistant to Senator Robert F. Kennedy, and as issues director for Senator Edward Kennedy's presidential campaign in 1990. During the Clinton administration, he filled various roles, including counselor to HHS Secretary Donna Shalala and then Assistant Secretary for Planning and Evaluation. He famously resigned from the Clinton administration upon the passage of the 1996 welfare reform legislation known as TANF, which has had disastrous and often hidden effects on the real, actual poor people in America, although it may look good on paper. So it's a pleasure again to have you with us, Professor Edelman. So the next questions that I was going to ask are about the money bail system. So what is the money bail system, and how many states are using this system, and why are they using this system? I think you just kind of touched on that, like to make up for shortfalls in tax revenue and stuff like that.
Well, money bail is everywhere. Um,
Okay.
and the the theory of it is that people are arrested and they, for one reason or another, the idea is certain people should be in the jail until they're brought to the court. Um, but it's overused hugely. Um, and the consequence is, if you have somebody who has been arrested for a serious thing, they allegedly killed somebody, or burglars, or a lot of certain number of people, you don't just say go home. Um, and but what happens is that people are hit on money bail, um, which could be $500 or more. But $500 for somebody who has no money, it might as be 5 million. Um, and there's no reason to have them sitting there in jail at all. Um, and there's a lot of research that says that people who allegedly did something, but it's not going to hurt anybody, and so on, they come to court. They show up, and you don't have to sit them there um, to make sure that they're come to court. Um, and typically, now there's been some places where there's some improvement in various places, um, but what happens is first of all, the people who are in the business of this love it, the companies that do that, and they have political power. So, they make stories about, oh, you got to have the people here because, otherwise they'll go walk away when they won't. And it's very hard to fix that. And so what you have, the last numbers that roughly the numbers are right. On any given day, nationally, you have about 700,000 people who are in jail because they're allowed under the words of money bail is if you can pay, you can go home. Well, the low income people don't have the money. But they have jobs, they have families, and so the person says, "My God, I'll say that I did it when in fact they didn't, so they can go home." And on any given day, that 700,000, about 450,000 of those have no basis to be being held, and shouldn't be there at all. And what happens is they say I did it when they didn't, and ruins their lives. So the whole system is terrible. And people have been working on this, but it's very difficult. You in New York are watching it right now. The last 4 years, where the governor wanted to make it better, and there's a couple of crimes, and just generally people get scared, and what happened in Albany it's not thrown it out, but it's making it more open for court, for judges who want to be tougher on people. And that's the fight that's been going there. Now, there have been winning in a number of places in the country. New Jersey has a very strong reform thing, and it's stuck. So that these minor things are not held there. They don't have a question of money at all. They just go home and wait to go when the time in court. So they have that, and there are a few places like that have done that. California is another example where the state said under the state constitution we're going to fix it, but the court said we're going to do it not ourselves. We'll leave it to the legislation, and they it turns into politics, and it's still going on. This is 5-6 years ago, and it's still going on right now. They can't get an agreement, and this is the bluest case in the country. Maybe Minnesota or somebody. But, it's very blue, but nonetheless, the politics on criminal stuff and the power of the people who run those money bail things make it hard to fix it. So it's still a long way to go to make it so that people who shouldn't have to wait in jail waiting, because I mean we know the research, the people would come. Um, then it gets more common in things like the whole system. Shouldn't they use probation and not put them in to prison or all kinds of things like that, and using prison itself in a much smaller number. And then what is a prison? And a prison is a place that's basically useless, as opposed to people to have a possibility to do things that can make it so they could have a second chance. And what we do when so much of somebody who's been in prison, it's got all sort of written on them, and nobody gives them a job. So it's very, very hard to have that second chance. Um, so the whole system is just full of mistakes.
So, about how much of the present prison system in the U.S., like approximately, is comprised of people who are there for money, bail issues, or debt to the court reasons?
Oh, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. Um, and there are various people who fight against it, and fines and fees uh, center that I'm on the board of. I think I talked to you about that. Um, and so people are making things going in the right direction. There were major changes in Nevada and New Mexico, where fines and fees had people in the state, and in the last months the last year, there's some substantial changes on hitting people with these things that it's both what the money is in the first place, and it says fines and fees. The fine is supposedly what you did, and maybe it's too high, and then the fees have nothing to do anything except to get money. And then when people can't pay, they get hogged in some cases in a number of states. That's when they get turned in to be criminal, and put them in jail because they can't pay. There's sort of a second round in it. And that's true. The whole system is wrong, and including putting people in there because they can't pay what they owe on the fines and fees. Um, and the whole systems have, starting in the 80s, running those systems. You can't. One might think that this is a government running things, and therefore the government pays for it. No, no, no. Um, you want to talk on the phone. But a much longer list of things happen to people in probation. In It's absolutely shocking. Over 30 states have, and these are government things. Some of them are run by other companies, um, and in order to be on probation, you have to pay to go on probation. Pay for probation. Well, guess what? I can't pay for that, and so therefore I go into the jail or I go into prison. What? And it's more than half the states in the country. In an idea, a very nice idea. Well, at a level where you could do something without actually going to court and be in a program, and therefore you won't go to court if everything goes along with what you go in there. Well, you got to pay for it, so people can't do that. So, and these things are in many states in the country. And it's basically going back to the 80s. There was essentially an idea that we shouldn't have so much taxes. And it's all the way up from federal down to the various lowest village. They, as a result, they turn to people themselves to have to pay these things and ruin them.
So my next question, I think I'm going to kind of ask it a little bit differently. So basically what you did say is that court costs or money bail system, so the court costs would be like fees and the money bail is like the fines. Are they based on ability to pay, which obviously it would seem not, so if they're flat fixed rates for everyone, regardless of income and assets, and you kind of touched on the fact that they're not really reasonable, can you give us like a couple of examples of like a thing and how much it costs for everyone, regardless of ability to pay? Or is it regardless of ability to pay?
Well, typical thing in my book, I talk about a woman named Very Cheeks.
Yes, I remember her. Yeah, she was the first.
Well, so she's hit with $135 and she can't pay it. Then they throw it up to 267. That's the fine. And then you have to pay for the probation. So there's more money on all of that. And that particular woman, fortunately, got a lawyer. But of course, there just aren't lawyers for everybody. So that's one example, but they're all over the country, it's just unfortunately it's kind of typical. I mean that's one example, but the people got hit. We found out, the story about Missouri, and we found out that there was a murder. You remember, by the police, then they looked into it more deeply and found that the town there was taking its own its own little town and make them pay themselves to run the city. Right. Well, but we found out then that it was national, and it still is. And it doesn't. We just don't pay enough attention to it, and people are working to fight a bit, and there are people who have won cases in courts around the country, and there have been changes in state laws on some places. But basically, the system is this incredibly system to squeeze people in fines and fees.
So I think that you had mentioned that on the criminal side, it affects people of color more. So the system of money bail, as it's practiced, also has a greater effect on people of color than on white people?
Yes.
Okay. In general, I saw in your book you were talking about something called a debt to the court. Where does this debt come from? Is it the same as the fines and fees, or is this something different? And what defenses does an individual have if they feel that this debt to the court has been assessed unfairly?
Well, if the setting in a particular state, or sometimes it's something in a county, that's what it is. There are a couple of things in the Supreme Court, limited kinds of things that you can't, if the number that they got from the court is a certain amount, and then without going to court, they add more things. It's a very limited kind of thing, but there's a little bit of sayings that you can't do. Doesn't make much difference. The basic way that it is you get in a particular state, and you don't pay on something, and then they get picked up and is arrested again because they haven't paid. And even if it was a civil thing in the beginning, it turns into a crime, and it adds up more on what they owed because they haven't paid, and they get a second time. And it turns out, over and over. In particularly in licenses for cars, they have to use them. So they owe money that they haven't paid, and they get caught again because they have to get to office, to job, to school, and so they get hit again. And so different ways that owing the money, and it can go up to thousands and thousands of dollars.
Oh my gosh, wow, okay. So the debt to the court is kind of like when you didn't pay the bail or the fine and the fee, and then it just keeps on adding more and more fines and fees, but then it's kind of like just a difference of semantics. Then it's called debt to the court when you're coming back into the court and you've been arrested for not paying the first fine, then you just kind of change the word from money bail into debt to the court, in other words. So it's the same thing.
That's right. And it's terrible. They make themselves, they've created that so that it's not illegal of them. It's just awful.
So it could be illegal as well, but the way that they do it, it makes it so that it's not illegal?
Well, it is. No, it's the setup that they set up. So this is written down and on a piece of paper that said this is how we do it.
Right.
And the only way that could stop it is a very limited way if it's done so that there's a constitutional problem. But it's almost not even useful to tell you that, because there is a Supreme Court case, but it doesn't help very much.
Okay. And so people who have these debts to the court, are there people that help them to fight the debts to the court? Or I guess that would be lawyers or charities or something like that?
Well, there have been a number of times where, for example, the case that I mentioned to you was unconstitutional, and she won because somebody found a lawyer. And so one of the problems here is that and perhaps this is what you're getting at, that because there aren't lawyers, there are aspects of it that actually are, if they could have a lawyer, stop it for a constitutional basis. But most of the time, there's no lawyer around.
Right. And if somebody was in that situation, like, so they would contact, like, if they were in DC, for example, they would contact the Access to Justice charity, or can they contact that from anywhere? Is that like a nationwide charity that you have lawyers for them?
Well, it's in big cities, it's generally speaking better, but there's still in various cities they're put on that they owe. For example, in Chicago, had take the driving, and so you could do the red and the green so fast that you could get caught, and it was a system. So I mean, they're all different things that just getting money in these various places. Yeah, is it illegal? No, it's just mean.